Hey there, podcast listeners. This is Brandon Hanley. I am the creator, the founder of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, and also the voice of a generation. If you have been listening lately, I think it's been a lot of fun. Today, I'm bringing you Ozzy Eyre. He is an amazing guest. Really pleased to have him on the show today. He and I met through just a Facebook group, and I've been listening to his podcast. You probably heard me talk about it before. It's called When's My Time. You can find him on whensmytime.com. He also mentions a number of, he mentions Facebook, and also I'll be providing a link to his website and to his podcast on the show notes. And I'm trying to think of some other things, guys. I mean, he and I just have a really awesome conversation. Ozzy's from across the pond over there in England, and what's awesome is that we are able to have this conversation. Whereas if you go back several years, it wouldn't be possible. Not in the manner that we did it. It's just simply being able to do the video, looking at each other, the time zone differences, and really just having this, like I said, an enjoyable conversation. He's a father of two gentlemen, and he talks about the differences of raising those boys, and the relationship that he has with his wife, how he started off, a little bit about, definitely about what he's up to, what he's creating, and what we'll be sharing in the video, and also just talking about uh, just the kind of where you go in life as a father, and just kind of some of the stories, and maybe not so much what he would have changed, or just some of the pertinent lessons that he had to share with us. I mean, his boys are older now, and he shares with us just what that's like. So please enjoy this episode. Make sure you reach out to Ozzy and say thanks for being on the show. Connect with him on Facebook, and just chat with him. Ozzy's a great guy, and I couldn't be more pleased than to be able to share our conversation with you. He again, just an amazing guy. Make sure you tune in, enjoy it. Let him know you've enjoyed it. Touch base with him on Facebook or any other social media platforms that he goes ahead and lists there for you. And make sure you take advantage of the special offer that he is going to offer in the towards the end of the show, and they'll also be in the show notes. Um, Also, if you haven't done so already and you're listening to this while it's fresh, make sure that you go into make sure you go and leave us a rating if you would on iTunes, and that's going to help other people like yourself who are enjoying the show, having an experience with the show, connecting with this show. It's going to help them find us the way that you have, and um, I'd really appreciate that if you leave a rating. It just really helps us all grow and grow together. And through the month of the rest of, was it, where are we? We're in August already. Wow. August 2017. So you've got a few more days, a couple more weeks that you can go ahead, and if you haven't joined the mailer list already, go to fatherhoodfortherestofus.com, join the mailer. I'll be sending out weekly fatherhood tips, and that will enter you in automatically to win an iTunes or an Android watch. It's got a camera. It connects with your Android. It also has potential to be used as a phone by itself. I mean, think about it. You just have it right there. You can just if anybody knows, that's the Jeopardy song. So go ahead and do that. I'd love for you to be able to win that. I've got two of these to give out. One will be through the through joining the mailer by itself. The other one will be if you do go and leave a rating on the show on iTunes. Send me a screenshot of that to Brandon at fatherhoodfortherestofus.com, and I'll enter your name in. And I'm really looking forward to getting those to you guys. I really am. So make sure you get those in there and join up while there still is time. Also, I'll be doing I've got the private Facebook group. If you haven't joined that, feel free to do so now. That's just fatherhoodfortherestofus.com. That allows fathers to just kind of go and just connect. get in there once a day and do a Facebook Live and really just kind of share what's going on, reach out for you guys and see kind of how you're doing, uh, offer an opportunity to share some challenges or situations or share some joys, something positive that's going on in your life. That's where we do that. That's where we help each other out. It's how we come along, is by being there for each other. We can't do it by yourself. I don't, and if you're doing it by yourself, you're giving yourself more of a challenge than I think that you need. And you may find that. And men's groups are, they're actually not as hard to come by, but they don't seem to be as well used. And really want to make sure that you're getting the full benefit of not just the podcast, but being able to surround yourself with other men that are really trying to move their lives forward in a positive manner, trying to be the fathers that they want to be, they intend to be, and doing it with intentionality. So go ahead and join that group. And if a group setting isn't your thing and you just want to have some one-on-one dialogue and you're looking for some help to get from point A to point B, making the next steps, what do I need to move myself from where I am today, then go ahead over to reconstruct.brandonhanley.com. That'll take you to, and you can set yourself up with a scheduled meeting. You and I can talk for about a half hour or so and see if we can work together. See if I can help you get unstuck, get to the next phase in your life where you want to be. So that'll be a free conversation, and we'll discuss it after that. Guys, hopefully everything's going awesome in your life. Enjoy this one with Ozzy Eyre. Talk to you later.
Here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Fatherhood for the rest of us. This is Brandon Hanley. I'm on with Ozzy. Is it Air or Eyre?
Air, as in the air you breathe. Yeah.
I love it. And that's what I was thinking earlier, but I just wanted to double check. But Ozzy is the founder of whenismytime.com, and it's a wonderful podcast that I recently tuned into. And Ozzy and I met through this group called Every Day is Saturday. We've all got a mutual friend in there, in Sam Crowley, who's kind of I know he inspired me. Ozzy, can you just tell me a little bit about how you kind of came about Sam Crowley, and give me a little bit about just kind of your podcast, I love your story, right? If you go and you download and you tune into Ozzy's podcast, you'll also be able to get the little backstory on there.
Well, that's very kind. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Sam, actually, Sam and I sort of, although we don't really know, we go back quite a way, because we were both part of a similar business, or the same business, back in about 2012, I think it was. And we sort of became Facebook friends. He just happened to be part of this business, and I happened to be part of the business as well. And you know how you get these sort of loose links, these loose ties. And it was shortly after that, I don't know if the listeners of your podcast know about the story about Sam's daughter, Susan, but it was shortly after that Susan was born. And well, I won't spoil the tale, but she went through some severe challenges as a baby, and Sam was sort of writing about that on Facebook, posting about that on Facebook, and so I kept, I kept abreast of what was happening. Then I happened to be in London having drinks before dinner with a friend from Alabama, who was also in the same company. Sam happened to know, he was over here speaking. I was unaware of this. Sam happened to know the same guy as well, got in touch with Tony, and we met up for a drink, and I remember buying Sam a drink. He doesn't remember that. And he should do, because it's a very rare thing for me to buy people drinks. But he sort of flourished from there, and I started to pay more attention, because having met Sam in the flesh, as it were, rather than just these sort of Facebook friends, I paid more attention to him. He really impressed me. And I started paying a lot more attention to him. Then I heard about his podcast training and that sort of stuff, and I got involved in that, and then I got involved in the Everyday Saturday thing, and it sort of all flourished from there, really. And that's sort of brought a lot of people together, including us, you and I. Right. So, and I'm grateful for that. Hope that wasn't too long an explanation.
No, absolutely not. I wasn't aware of how you two kind of connected, and I'm glad that you did.
I think
And
I remember more of it than Sam does. He made more of an impression on me than I did on him.
That's funny. That's funny. But what's funny too is I was listening to your podcast yesterday, and not just because you mentioned my name, but
listen, I was excited. I wanted to tell people I was on it because I've told people before to listen on my podcast. Told people before to listen to you.
You have, and that's very kind of you, and I appreciate that. But one of the things that you kind of talked about in there is this global community that we're able to create and have, right? I mean, if we go back even, sure, I guess maybe 20 years ago, we could have had a telephone conversation, but this is very Jetsons, right?
Yeah, we're living in the future. We are living in the future.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and we can close that transcontinental gap just like we are right now. I mean, you're on the other side of the pond, as they call it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we've I've gained a lot of knowledge just from listening to your podcast. I'm going to talk up your podcast for a second,
because very sweet of you. Thank you.
I really just enjoy it, and I feel like I'm elevated just by listening to you chat and share your views and share kind of what's going on in your world. And again, I was kind of joking to myself earlier. I was like, Ozzy, you have the opportunity to perpetuate how great you are to me, or you can just you can sink the ship. Doesn't matter. Do what you want to do. But in my eyes, I really enjoy what it is that you're bringing to the world through your podcast, and it's just been a year for you, right?
In fact, it was yesterday that I realized that I'd been podcasting for just over a year, and that's why I think I called that one "Oops, I Missed an Anniversary,"
right?
because it had slipped me by, and I think it's an overused term, but it is really humbling, this podcasting business. It really is, because a year ago, I didn't think anybody would listen. I was sort of recording just for myself, really. It was just an experiment. It was just to do something. And so I put it out there, and part of me was thinking, what if nobody listens to it? And then part of me was thinking, oh, crikey, what if somebody does listen to it? What happens then?
Right.
And
that's the more terrifying part.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, what nonsense he's speaking. But I mean, I checked the other day, and I could not believe that this podcast, the one we're talking about, has been downloaded in 71 countries around the world. Some of them I didn't even recognize the names of these countries. It's just, and it is genuinely humbling to think that somebody the other side of the world is listening to what you're saying.
It's awesome.
I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah. Anytime anybody's tuning in, or gives me compliments, such as yourself, you've tuned in and sent in, feedback on iTunes, left me a rating, stuff like that, or like even just saying, hey, you've reached out to me and just said that was a great episode. You talking about, it's amazing. Or having somebody that you figure is maybe not listening. My first review came from my neighbor across the street, I was like, wow, man, thanks. I didn't even know it was him, because a lot of times the names of the person gets shortened into something weird. But I was touched, and it was awesome. And I was like, wow, I guess I'll keep doing it. And I just enjoy doing it though too, right? Just kind of, it's almost like a therapy for me.
Yeah, I get that entirely. Listen, I get that entirely. In fact, some of my, it would be wrong to say favorite podcasts the ones that I've done personally, if I can say that. But the ones that have been most useful to me are when bad things have happened. I mean, you'll know that we've had recent terrorist attacks over here in the UK, and right. Some of the. And this sounds awfully selfish, but it just helped me work out in my head what I felt about this.
Right.
I've done more lately as well, where I'm out walking with the dog.
I love those.
And that seems to have struck a chord with some people.
I love those.
Well, that's very kind. So I see it as a great opportunity. I'm out there, and I can do that, and I'm not being interrupted by things popping up on my computer or whatever. I'm just out there in the countryside, and
Right.
I can just focus on talking to whoever's listening. But yeah, it's a useful way, as you say. It's quite a catharsis. It's a useful way of working things through, and it's cheaper than therapy.
Right. So, we're on here today, and first of all, it's tea time, right? Let's talk a little bit about tea. It's tea time. You've got yours,
and I've got my Earl Grey here.
I believe that I'm doing it completely incorrectly. I've got some herbal tea here.
That's okay.
And I've got this in this container, and I feel like if I was in England, nothing would be proper about that.
Well, no. Listen. I've got this in a mug, not a cup and saucer, which would be the proper way to do it. But
all right,
we only tend to do that when we have sort of posh relatives around and that sort of stuff. So trying to impress.
I've got it.
Yeah.
So I reached out to you and I said, man, I would love to do this at tea time, just because I've never experienced tea time, and I figured that just seemed like you would be the right person to be doing it with. I don't know why. So here we are. It's tea time with Ozzy Eyre, and having a great day with Ozzy. We're just kind of chatting it up. But aside from Ozzy is a father, so that is one of the primary reasons for having you on today, Ozzy. But the other thing that we wanted to talk about, I wanted to share with the world, because they're all tuning into this show right now, is you've been working on this video product to teach others how to use it, and I think you allowed me to beta test it a little bit and get in there, and I've gone through a couple of the modules, and I found them to be extremely helpful. And
that's extraordinarily kind. Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted you to just kind of tell us what that's about, when we're looking at seeing it come out, and who the target people.
Sure. Right. Okay. Well, perhaps I could give you a bit of a background as to how I got into video myself.
Absolutely.
And then we can talk. I'm happy to tell you about it, of course. Yeah. I mean, I won't go for the full backstory, as you said. I've talked about that quite a lot on my podcast. But back in 2010. I came to a decision that I was going to leave the corporate life behind. I'd had a bit of a trying time of it, and I can tell you exactly where I was and when it was. It was Thursday, August the 12th, 2010. My wife and I were sat in the Umbrian Hills in central Italy. We'd taken a vacation down there. We'd driven down there. And back at that time, I was working in financial services. In a very special field. I won't go into it, but it was a very sort of testing field. It was rewarding, but testing field. And a few weeks earlier, though, my mother had passed away. And also within a few months of each other, 4 of our friends were diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
Bang, bang, bang. And that sort of thing makes you think about your own mortality a little bit. When that happens. So I was sitting there on this hill. It was the end of a perfect day. We'd had a perfect time there, a perfect evening, end of a perfect day, sitting on the terrace, looking down this valley, high in the hills, and we could see the lights of Assisi twinkling on a distant hillside. Everything was perfect about it. And I suddenly thought, well, next week, this is all over for me. This is all over for me. And I turned to Carol and I said, look, next week, when I'm back at work, I go to the back of the line, the back of the queue for my own time. Everybody else tells me what I do with my day. Everybody else. And I just get to play with what's left. And I'm just not prepared to do that anymore. In fact, that's where the When's My Time title of the podcast comes from.
Right.
I said to her, when's my time to do the things I want to do? When's my time to live the life I want to live? And fortunately, Carol said, yeah, you're right. You need to make changes. And so we drove home. I was really excited and really scared because I knew that we were going to make changes. I hadn't got a clue what those changes were. Didn't know what they were going to be. But within 6 months, I'd quit my job.
Wow.
I still didn't know really what I was going to do. I'd got some ideas. I was reckless, and please, anybody listening to this podcast, do not follow what I do. If you've got a decision to make, ask me what I do, and then do the opposite. Is what I'd say. But I quit my job, and listen, I was in a fortunate position at the time because I knew that I could last about a year before I needed to earn any money. We'd got a little bit put by. And the trouble was, it was nearly 2 years before I earned any. so we came sort of pretty close to losing the lot. Now, the reason I tell you all of that is to get you around to the video thing.
That's right.
Because it was at that time that I realized that I needed to get some videos together to promote the business that I was doing. And I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money to go and pay anybody to do it. And that, in a crazy sort of way, was a good thing because it made me do it myself. It made me learn how to do this.
Okay.
But I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money to pay anybody to do it for me. I didn't have any money to buy any kit. I didn't have any money. I just had to do it with what I had lying around. Right. So phones and I had some screen recording software and that sort of stuff. But I had to figure things out the hard way myself. And I'll tell you, Brandon, I am the least techie person I know and the least techie person you will ever meet. Somebody once said to me, anything more mechanically complicated than a knife and fork, and you can forget it. You're never going to do it. So consequently, I've had to learn the non-techie way of doing everything.
Right.
And that's how I've built my course. I've built my course for people like me who want to make video, who when they hear geek speak, they just close down. I don't know. You may be fluent in geek speak and tech talk and all that sort of stuff. I'm not, and I just close down. There's a barrier that comes down when I hear that. My sons, I mean, they are techie beyond reason, and so we have very interesting one-sided conversations. I'm talking about something, they're talking about something else, and we'll have a chat, but neither of us gets anything from the other because I don't understand what they're saying, they don't understand what I'm saying. Right. But the whole point of the course is that it is tech talk is banned in it, in the course. There's no tech speak in it because I don't understand it. Right. So what I've tried to do is give as broad an introduction in the course as I possibly can. So I deal with to camera video. So where you're talking to a camera or you're recording somebody on a camera. I deal with screen capture video. I deal with animation, which is incidentally what I do most of. I mean, I've now got, I should say, my main business is video. I sell videos to clients.
Nice.
And so the key thing there is that the lack of tech ability doesn't need to hold you back in any of this. So if you're interested, whether it's for your own promotion of your own business or whether it's for you want to build a video business or you just want to make better, sort of videos of your family vacations, but you feel the tech is holding you back, or you feel the cost of buying expensive equipment is holding you back, or any of those other things, that's what this course is there for. It's to demolish all of that. It's to say, look, you don't need to be techie. You don't need to have, bottomless pockets. You don't need to have all of that. Right. You can make great video. And I'm going to show you how. You can watch over my shoulder as I show you how. And so that's what it is.
Right.
Does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I've gone through a few of your modules. If you don't mind, I'm just going to speak to one thing you didn't mention here in all this is that you actually go over how to tell a story, right?
Yes.
And there too, which has been, and that's in one of your first or second modules, which is really, really helpful for me.
It's incredibly important.
Yeah. And it's not that, and I don't want to say that it's not new information. But the manner that she's told it was very easy, and it rejogged some stuff that I had been familiar with, but it was also done in a really great manner where I think probably because of the English voice, it stuck better for me. Like, well, Ozzy said it just like this, and this is the way it needs to be done.
Well, I can tell you where that originated, if I may.
Sure.
It's because many of my clients come to me and say, hey, I want a video. Okay, so what do you want the video to do? Well, I need a video for my website. Yeah, but what do you want the video to do? And so we'd go through that process. They just knew that they wanted a video. They didn't know what the video was supposed to do. They didn't. And look, I'm not criticizing them in that. You know, it's just that they'd seen other people have videos on their websites, or somebody had told them, you know, what you need is a video on your website, and so they come to a guy who makes videos.
Sure.
And so why wouldn't you just say, I want a video?
Right.
But I needed to know, if I was going to create a video for them, I needed to know what they wanted it to do, whether they wanted somebody to buy something at the end of, or to pick up the phone and call them, or to click on a page on their website, or whatever, and then structure the video so it led them up to that. Right. But it's very important to start. One of the first lessons I say is start with the end in mind.
Right, that's right.
Have a clear idea of what the purpose of the video is, and then you can work back from that point. And there are certain stages that you can go through for pretty much any video.
And I think, like you're saying too, make sure you're having that dialogue with the customer too. As soon as you have a patron, you're like, hey, this is really important. Somebody does come up to you and say, make me a video. I'm more of a shoot from the hip, ask questions later type of guy, right? So I may say, all right, well, what's your website? Instead of asking like any questions, I may just go to the person's website, see what it's about, make a video, waste all this time without having that conversation and say, by the way, what did you want this video to do?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can save so much time and money, obviously, if it's your business.
Right.
In just having that simple conversation, half-hour's conversation.
Have that
can
conversation.
Save you hours and days of work. You know, it's But yeah, so it was sort of self-serving. In fact, the lessons that I give there, I actually package together in a document that I give my clients. You know, I send them and say, look, you know, this is what we're going to talk about, and let's take it from there.
So that's a lot of fun. You basically you were self-taught, and you go through all these videos and you learn how to do it. You created a business out of it after. I mean, so what was your other option, right? You come up on 2 years end.
I mean, listen, it was either that or hand the keys to the house in, you know.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd definitely be curious. How was your wife at this point, right?
I mean, listen, we've been married now for just over 36 years, and every day I wake up and think, how am I still getting away with this? Because, you know.
And you got the two boys, right?
We've got the two boys. Yeah, I've got two sons. One's 32 now, and the other's 26, with 27 in a few months. So yeah, I mean, one is still at home. The other moved out. One's still at home, still working. But, I mean, like most kids his age, and younger, wants to move away because he went away to university for 3 years, got his degree, and came back with debt, like a lot of kids.
Sure.
So it's finances that are keeping him here. He's hoping to move out fairly soon, actually. So whilst we really don't want them to go, and we'd love the other one to come back, you know, we know it's the right thing for them to do, to fly the nest.
Sure.
But Carol's been very. You asked about Carol. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
She's listen, bring me back on track. You've learnt by now.
I go off with you. It's hard. It's hard for me to stay on
Carol
track.
has been an absolute brick through it. I mean, there have been times when there have been tears from both of us when it looked pretty bad. I won't. You know, I tell people this in the story because. You know, I tell people don't do what I do, but I still believe that I'm doing the right thing in telling people, look, don't stay in a place where you're not comfortable. Don't stay in a place forever and regret it. You know, where I mean, I was 12 years in a job I hated and 20 years in a job I tolerated. 32 years it took me to figure out that I should be doing something different. Now, have a better plan than I did. Have a better plan, but, you know, get yourself a plan and do something about it. But Carol has been amazing through it. And I can tell you, Brandon, although we've had some really sticky, tough times in the last few years, I don't think I'd change any of it because we have grown as people. We've grown as individuals in that. And that sounds awfully airy-fairy, wishy-washy, but we have. We're stronger people now for having gone through that. And I don't think, I seriously, you talked about, you know, 10, 20 years ago, you know, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation because, you know, we'd have to pick up a phone and cost a fortune to phone around the world and we won't be able to record it and all that sort of stuff. Listen, I wouldn't have had this sort of business 10 years ago, but equally, if somebody told me 10 years ago, Ozzy, you'll be making your living making animated videos. And by the way, you'll also be filming sort of studio quality videos on your phone, and you'll be talking to people around the world. You'll be sent. I'd sent for the men in white jackets because it's so far removed from what I could have imagined when I set out on this. Right. And I think that's going to be true in another 5 years. Yeah, if we look back now, things are traveling at such a pace, and opportunities are opening all around. I think we live in a wonderful age.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that one thing that gets, how would I frame it? I would say that, a lot of people in my mind anyways, still are viewing, the older generations are viewing life as it was, right? As opposed to all the opportunities that are currently available.
Yeah.
And it's hard even to get a grasp of all the opportunities. There are so many that, like, again, it's harder for, I think, a lot of other generations that are by the books or any of that. Like, well, this is the way it's always been. Why would it change so rapidly? It's just changing so rapidly. You gotta hop on.
Yeah, I mean, there are things I miss, of course. The things, but it's far and outweighed by the good stuff that's happening.
Oh yeah.
It's. I mean, listen, I'm in a few months I'll be 60.
Nice.
So I know that I have way more yesterdays than I have tomorrows. So it's you take a view. Well, and I also know that there were 32 years of it that
you pissed away.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So my view is my days are numbered, and therefore they get more valuable every day because that's another one gone. So the ones that are left are still more valuable.
Right,
so
absolutely.
why not take on these challenges? Why not learn new skills?
Yeah.
Why not? I admit I had to learn video because I had no other choice at that stage. But it opened up things to me. But one of the things that sort of sustained me through that, because there were challenges, there were times, and there still are, where I come across a thing where, I'm working on a video and I'm saying, look, I know this can be done because I've seen other people do it, but I don't know how to do it. But there's, do you know Brian Tracy? Have you heard of
Absolutely.
Brian Tracy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. There's one thing that he said that a few years ago that when I first heard it, I thought, oh, yeah. But then later I came to understand it. And what he said was all skills are learnable. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, got that. But it wasn't until I actually sat down and was faced with that, how do I do this? I know it can be done. And then I remembered what Brian Tracy had said, all skills are learnable. And I thought, so somebody's learned how to do that. Mm-hmm. And the chances are they weren't that much brighter than me. They may have been brighter than me, but they weren't that much brighter than me. So if they could learn how to do it, it means I can learn how to do it. I don't know how to do it yet, but I can learn how to do it.
Right.
And it sort of put me in a position where I felt better about the fact that I don't know how to do this right now, but I will do. I will know how to do it. I just have to figure it out. Right. And that also gave me the confidence, particularly in the early days, to take on jobs for clients where, I'll be honest, I said yes to the job before I knew how I was going to do it. I wasn't winging it in as much as, I
got confidence in your ability.
I had the confidence in the ability to find out how to do it. I wasn't taking on a job that was so far outside of my reach that I knew I couldn't, I wasn't taking on a Steven Spielberg blockbuster type video, Right. It was nothing of that sort. But they'd come up with a project that they wanted a specific effect in it. I thought, I have no idea how to do it, but I'm young. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. And so, and that helped me.
What was the effect?
Oh, I've done it several times. I mean, there are certain constraints within certain softwares that I've used because obviously at the start I was using beginner type software.
Sure. Sure.
And they'd look at a film that had been made in pro type software, So I was using sort of hobbyist software because that's all I had.
Right.
And I was having to figure out how to make the hobbyist type software do what the pro software was doing, so all workarounds to do it. So it looked as though it was doing that. It was just sleight of hand, it's just trickery. But it's just figuring out things like that. And that a lot of video making, and in fact, I think it's one of the things I say in one of the modules of the course. A lot about video making, particularly animation, is problem solving. It's right. I want to do this, so let's figure out how I'm going to do it.
I get it. So Oz, I love it. I love what's going on. Let's loop in the boys, right? Let's loop in the family. Let's loop in the fatherhood. Let's loop it in, and I think we're going to kind of work from two different angles. First, like I said, you've done this 32 years. I think they're both in the financial sector, if I'm not mistaken.
I was 12 years. I was in retail.
Okay,
and I hated that. Within a week, I knew I was in the wrong place, but I was in a new relationship. We just moved into a place, and shortly after that, we got our first mortgage. And fear and ignorance kept me where I was.
Gotcha.
I absolutely hated it, but fear and ignorance kept me where I was because I didn't think, hey, I can look up from this and see what else it is that I want to do. Right. If you want, I can go into some of the stories about.
Hold on.
We've gone too much.
Hold on. No, you're good. You're good. So you've got 12 years there, and then the finance
financial services for 20 years.
20 years, right? Okay. Yeah. And so then you've got your two boys, and you decide after your trip down to Italy, you're like, when's my time? 6 months.
Yeah.
So how old are the boys, and what's the whole family atmosphere when this decision is made?
To be honest, the boys by then were of an age. I mean, where are we talking now? We're talking about 6-7 years ago. So the younger son was away at university, and the older son was on his way out the door. He's moving out. So they were pretty cool about it because it didn't affect them that much.
Were they excited for you? I would think that they may be excited for you a little bit.
Probably they were. They're pretty cool about this sort of stuff.
There must have been like days and years where you would day after day you would come home. You probably like I'm just gonna imagine slough into your seat when you get home like this day's over.
I tell you,
right?
When my youngest was little, I mean preschool, 3. There was a period where he didn't actually believe that I lived here in the family home because I would leave before he got up in the morning, and I'd get home after he had gone to bed at night. So he'd see me occasionally, sort of weekend, and I sometimes work weekends and that sort of stuff. And so he'd see me one day out of 6 if he was lucky, that sort of thing. So he believed I lived in a village about 3 miles from here.
Did he have a name for that village?
Yeah, it's Henfield. It's an actual village. He believed I lived in this actual village,
right?
And it didn't matter how much I tried to convince him that I lived here. Don't be silly, Daddy. Don't be silly, Daddy. This isn't your house. Now, everybody else did what you just did. They laughed.
Sure.
But then, to me, it was like a knife to the heart.
Sure, absolutely.
I just wanted to be with him.
Right. Yeah.
And not only... But it was sort of a double thing because not only did I just want to be with him, I was going to a place I hated. I hated it. Right. It wouldn't quite have been so bad if I actually liked the place that I was going to. And looking back now, I think, Ozzy, why the hell didn't you just get up and walk? But it was fear that kept me there. It was fear because I was the only breadwinner, as back then, and because we took the traditional route. Carol stayed at home with the kids and that sort of stuff until they were in school.
Right.
And it was fear that kept me there. But yeah, it was I'd love to be able to say that I look back at my kids' childhood with fondness. The bits that I spent with them, I did.
Sure.
But the overarching thing over that period is that the dread that I felt every day at having to get up and go and do something I didn't want to do.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and when it came to be that question back in 2010, one of the things that I felt most sad about was that I hadn't been wise enough to make that decision back then, so that I could have spent more time with them. Sure. I could have engineered more time with them, and all I'd got. You see, in all of this, Brandon, the one thing that and it still, after I gave up corporate life, it still took me a while to understand that the mistake I'd been looking at was, how do I earn the money I need?
Mm-hmm.
How do I earn the money? Now, I'm not saying the money isn't important. Of course it's important. It's vital.
Sure.
But I was looking at it from the wrong angle. Instead of saying, how do I go out and earn the money I need? I should have been saying, well, how do I give value?
Mm-hmm.
How do I bring value? How do I become more valuable so that people want to give me that money?
Right.
And I was just looking for ways of earning money. I was looking for opportunities to try to earn money instead of turning it on its head. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I got a question for you though, because this is one that I spin around in my mind quite often. What else could we call it other than value, Ozzy? Because I mean, I think that some of what you give, especially on the podcast, it's not so much. I think value is almost degrading to what you do.
Well, that's very sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I think if you share of yourself, if you're honest and you share of yourself, I think that goes quite a long way. And when I'm talking about value, I'm not just talking about monetary value. I'm talking about something that enhances the other person in some way.
Right.
Whether it could be a physical enhancement, it could be something that actually helps them physically, or it could be something that helps them do better business, or it could be something that just, hey, I'm having a better day because of that.
Right. Yeah.
Does that?
No. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just feel a lot of times like we say that to each other and other people. I want to bring value to you, and I want to, but I just believe that there's so much more, right? I think that value is kind of like I think that value is kind of an underrated or overstated, overused, and it doesn't really encompass what's being given or granted, all that stuff, right? So again, I was just curious. I often I run around and the brain does nothing but think, and so I'm like, value isn't really what I think that you give. It doesn't really speak to, and I don't want to lead with value myself. I don't want to say, hey, I'm here to bring you value, because I'm not. I got something else that I'm trying to give you. I just can't. I'm still working on the articulation of that myself. So let's another spot I want to kind of hit too, Ozzy, is like, what about your childhood, right? Like, how did you grow up?
Right. Yeah. I can tell. I grew up in a different place from because right now I'm in the south of England, south of UK, sort of very near the bottom edge, as it were.
Where?
But I grew up in the Midlands, a county called Derbyshire.
Okay.
In the Midlands, which is as it sounds, it's in the centre of England, centre of Great Britain, and it's a very beautiful area. I still visit occasionally because I've still got one aunt alive still up there. Don't get up there as much as I'd like to. My heart remains there, actually. But that's not where I met Carol. Carol's from South Wales.
Okay.
We met in London. I moved to London when I was 20. Which is another story. But yeah, my father, he was a coal miner. My mother was, in my early childhood, a stay-at-home mum. Money was always tight. My father, just to give a bit of background for him, he was, when he was about 8, his father, I don't know an awful lot because he never told me, and I figured if he wanted to tell me, he would. So I never asked him too much about it. But what I do know is his father upped and left when he was about 8 years old, leaving his mother, who had a form of multiple sclerosis, with 3 kids. His younger brother, my dad was the middle brother. The younger brother was adopted by his great aunt, my great great aunt. The older brother was old enough to make his way on his own. He was 50. I mean, we're talking, just around about the start of the Second World War, 39, something like that, 1939, 38, 39. The older brother made his way on his own, leaving my dad, who was 8 years old, as his mum's primary carer. He was looking after his mum with multiple sclerosis back then, because there was no social workers, there was nothing of that sort back then. He was it. So consequently, he lost a lot of his schooling. He missed a lot of his schooling, and the days that he went to school, he was often beaten for being absent on other days. That sort of stuff. He had a pretty tough time of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now he wanted, as he grew up, so he missed a lot of schooling, but he taught himself a lot. He read quite a lot. And he, by the age of 18, which was very unusual for those days, he was the manager of a store in Nottingham, a painting and decorating store, where Robin Hood, Nottingham, and all that sort of stuff. So we lived near that. But then there was what was called national service, when you got, I think you'd call it the draft there, where you got called up into the forces. Now he wanted to go into the Royal Air Force, the RAF. Mm-hmm. But by then, his mother was so ill that he couldn't leave. So the other option back then, there was a thing that you could either go into the forces or you could go down the coal mines, because that was deemed a national. Because after the war, the UK had no money. The war, just bankrupted us, really. Right. If you guys hadn't been there to bail us out, whatever. So he went down the coal mines because that was what was known as a reserved occupation. You could, if you were down the coal mines, you couldn't go into the force. So he had to give up in his dream of going to the Royal Air Force, because he had to be home to meet his mum, to be with his mum, to care for her. And so he ended up going down the coal mines. And that's where he stayed, and it pretty much crippled him. He rose to be what was called a colliery overman, which is sort of a foreman position.
Okay.
Oddly enough, he earned less doing that than he would have done if he'd just stayed a collier, because he didn't get the overtime payments and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, it was a tough life. He died quite. I mean, he was 69 when he died, but he wasn't in the best of health for the last few years because of the work that he'd done. So it was tough seeing that. So I can remember, the excitement, just to give you an idea, we were excited when I think it was about 12 when we got a telephone,
Right.
So it was, we didn't have much in the way of material things. However, we didn't go without.
Sure.
There were always gifts at Christmas. There was always food on the table. There's always that sort of stuff taken care of. So, from a loving point of view, my dad was fantastic. I mean, he was local church warden and all that sort of stuff. Although he got a really heavy job, and he was a kind, caring man. He was a great artist as well. He could draw. Incidentally, I can't draw, although I do animated drawings.
Right.
I really struggle with drawing, but so I didn't inherit anything from him on that. He was a great artist, my dad.
Looking back, do you feel like any frustration that he maybe didn't take that anywhere?
Oh yeah. I mean, and he would have been exactly the same reasons as me. Exactly the same reason. He hated the coal mines.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, he loved the camaraderie. I mean,
sure.
The men. And when it was his funeral, I'm not kidding you. People often say this, but they were standing outside the church. They were standing, and there were grown men, big burly men, weeping because he was so loved by his men.
Right.
But it would have been wonderful had he had an education, because he was so much smarter than me. And he just didn't, he literally didn't. From 8 years old, that was the last of his regular education. Right. Anything else he learned was off his own bat.
Gotcha.
But he used to love to go to the art galleries. He did flower arranging. He did art, he did flower arranging, all this sort of stuff. Right. Not things you normally associate with
the guy in the coal mine.
Yeah, but he loved beauty.
Right.
Our tastes didn't always coincide on that, but he loved beauty. He could have had such a different life, but it wasn't to be. Right. So
what would be like? What would you say is, as a father now, and I wouldn't say as a past father, but like, going into fatherhood, what is something that when you were raising your boys was something that your dad had always taught you, and you were like, you kept on, you
Oh,
perpetuated?
that's oh Lord, that is a tough one. Gosh, I wish you'd. I think listen to what your mother says. I know that's no. I mean, he once told. I tell you one thing that really does stick, and I made that as a sort of a joke. But I was once having an argument with my mother, and I think, I mean, this was in the early 70s, and I think I wanted my hair long because boys had their hair long and that sort of stuff. And I said something like, "But all my friends have, all my friends." And my father has had enough of this. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was probably something like that. But anyway, the bottom line was, well, but all my friends are like that. And, and my father just took me to one side and said, listen, your mother is the best friend you will ever have. Never forget that.
Right.
And even though I was really upset at the time and all that just boom, hit me in the chest. There's this reality that my mother is the best friend I'll ever have.
Right.
And never forget that. And I've certainly told my boys that. I've certainly told my boys that fortunately Carol's, Carol's nature is such that there are very, very few flare-ups. She's the most tolerant person I know. She has to be, with me around.
Sure.
But yeah, and I think also that going back to what my dad taught me, I think it was the appreciation of the countryside, the appreciation of natural beauty, certainly natural beauty. Maybe artistically, his tastes were different from mine, but the appreciation of craft as well, the appreciation of, and by that I mean if you see a beautifully made, I don't know, just a beautifully made wooden box. If it's beautifully made, it's workmanship. It's that appreciation of what's gone into that.
Right.
From working with somebody, anybody who works with their hands,
right,
and does it well to a high standard.
Right.
I think that certainly, and I think the boys see that as well. I think I've passed that on down to the
That's
boys.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Not that I've got those skills, but the appreciation of those skills.
Yeah, that's a good one. Those are both good ones. So I know your boys are, one's back at the home and one's out on his own. Let's talk a little bit about just that, right? Let's talk about how does that feel, right? Like, do you feel like you've done everything? You look back, you reflect, and you're like, here's some things I could have improved or whatever. Do you see your an ability to overcome any of the things that you did in the past today?
Yeah, I look back, and some of this is quite tough, but because when I was at my lowest times, I never sort of took it out on them. I don't mean that, but I probably wasn't as open to their needs as wallowing in the fact that I was hating what was going on around me. And I would certainly change that. I would certainly tell and I try to do that more now. If I'm having a tough time now, I'm here in my office stroke studio that I do my podcast and that sort of stuff. And if I'm having a tough day, once I walk through that door, I try and leave that behind as far as they're concerned. We did genuinely between us, Carol and I, when we were going through tough times, the boys never knew that. The boys never knew that we were going through a tough time. But if I was having a bad time in here, inside, for listeners of the podcast, I'm just tapping my head. If I was having a bad time in here, I wasn't that good at keeping that away from the boys, and I would certainly work harder on that now, because listen, they were no part of that. They didn't. So what didn't contribute.
How would you tell me to if I'm having a rough time, or if I'm how would I?
I think the thing is just to remember, you're having a rough time with one part of your life. That's the part of your life you're having with. The boys are the exact opposite part of your life. The boys are what make it worth it.
Right.
The boys are, for me, Carol and the boys and my little dog Jack, they're the bit that makes it worth, getting up in the morning.
Right.
So why on earth would I inflict the pain, that's too strong a word, but the discomfort that I'm feeling about this part of my life? Why would I infect the other part of my life with that? Because that's the bit that fuels me. That's the bit that keeps me going.
Right.
So I think if you can, it's not easy. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but if you can keep those two things distinct and keep reminding yourself that this wonderful woman has chosen you to be your partner, and how the heck did I ever swing that one? The best sales job I ever did.
Sure.
Thank heavens I had witnesses at the time. Just keep reminding yourself of that. And then she gave you the gift of these two fine kids, these fine young men. How on earth did they grow up to be such fine young men with, what I did? so
with my tutelage, how did this happen?
Yeah. So just keep reminding yourself of, the absolute blessing that they are. And that ought to, I would hope, make you say, oh, hang on a minute. They don't need the burden of my worries right now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the other thing you said in there too, which I think until you have a child that you kind of make fun of, is that they are a blessing, right?
Oh yeah.
And even I think initially, like for me anyways, it was like a blessing. Blah, 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 blah. But then like as time goes on, like wow, they really are a blessing. It's amazing the joy that they bring into my life, right? And I'm sure that was the same for you.
My boys teach me so much. And I'm not saying that lightly. You asked, what lessons have I taught that? They teach me.
Right.
They teach me. I mean, my oldest son, for one, I mean, he doesn't do it anymore because the camps have been bulldozed. But he works in, we have a thing called the National Health Service over here, the NHS, which is our health service. And he works in that. So he works keeping their systems going during the week. At the weekends, every weekend, he was driving to the Channel Tunnel, going through the tunnel to the camps in Calais and providing aid to the refugees in the camps every weekend. He was exhausted from his week at work, but he'd get up on around about 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning because they were running this on a shoestring. They ran a kitchen out there where they'd give them hot drinks and food out in the camps in northern France. And they were running this on a shoestring, so the cheapest time they could get across the channel was around about 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So they'd get up at, sort of 1 o'clock on a Saturday morning, drive down there, work all day in the kitchens, providing support and help and maybe a bit of, help filling in forms, that sort of translation service, all that sort of stuff, taking out clothing that had been donated because it got very cold in the winter months. These refugees had come from their homes with nothing from war zones. And so he was doing that. And I in the past and still do have contributed to charity financially, but he was out there doing something.
Right.
He was out there making a difference. And when you've, he told me stories about kids. I mean, talking about kids, that on his very first visit out there, a 10-year-old boy was in the camp who was on his own, a refugee boy on his own. And he came to my son and he asked him to bring him back into the UK. And he had to say, look, I can't. I can't. This 10-year-old boy, he's got no parents, no brothers, no sisters, nobody, 10 years old in a camp. And he sees his best shot as to be to go and talk to a total stranger and say, please, can I come with you?
There's something to be said.
I don't think I have that sort of courage to be able to do that.
To say no, or to be in the midst of it.
To actually to put myself in the position where I know that that's a possibility, because it would. I think I'm too sentimental. There's a time there's a time for compassion and there's a time for sentiment. And I think I think it would break my heart to do, I think that the sentiment would get in the way of me being able to deal with it. And that's a weakness on my part. I know.
That's a great statement, Ozzy. Would you, do you mind just kind of delineating the two, compassion and sentiment?
Well, compassion is something that probably stimulates you into some sort of action, whether it's charitable or whatever. Compassion I would suggest, it would stimulate you into making a difference in the other person. Sentiment is when you look at something and you get a lump in your throat and you get a tear in your eye, and then you think, I can't deal with this, and you walk away. Does that?
Okay. Yeah.
You distance yourself from it. You feel bad for yourself. The feeling is internalized rather. You feel sorry for the individual, of course, but you feel so much for yourself that it doesn't. You're too. I don't know, maybe egotistical. It's all about the way you feel about the situation rather than what can I do to make the situation better.
I like that.
Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard anybody, kind of strike a difference between the two, and I think that was really, really.
I'd never heard it either till I just said it.
No, it's good. It's definitely it's good. And again, so I mean, if you, even though we can't turn back time, and we can't go to say, you did these jobs that you hated because of a fear, and you talked about having your children now, and you telling them to say, hey, don't do the same thing. What are those conversations like?
Listen, the conversations that I've had have been, my older son loves his job. He believes in the National Health Service. He loves his job. My younger son, I think, sees his current job as being a way of getting what he wants, which is eventually to move out here. The job itself is a means to an end. Neither of them are particularly entrepreneurial. Neither of them. I won't say they lack ambition. I think they're content in themselves, which to a degree is something I envy. I'll be honest, that level of contentment. And so I wouldn't tell them to change anything if they are content. I would only say, look, if you do feel there is more that you want out of life, if you do feel that there's more that's out there waiting for you, go. Don't wait. Don't wait. Go get it. You don't have to leave one thing behind to go do the other either. If you can explore those other things while you're doing what you're doing. But as I say, my older son, he's in a tech capacity. He loves tech things, but he also loves people, and the tech capacity he's in helps doctors and nurses do the job that they do to support people. So he loves that.
That's awesome. It's he's kind of got something that's got purpose driven.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something he really believes in. Now, come the day that he doesn't believe it anymore, I'll say, look, and he already knows. He does other things. In fact, he's rather gallingly, he started animating not so long ago, and he's a better animator than me.
Is his video? Is that the one that you'd shared and went viral? Yeah.
It absolutely did. I think the last time I looked, it had well over within a week. It had well over 800,000 views.
That's amazing.
But I mean, it struck a chord because it was political related. It was, I suppose it was making a political point, but it was around about the time coming up to we just had general election over here for new government and that sort of stuff, which we ended up with the old government. So it did strike a chord, but excuse me, but it sort of led to quite a few people getting in touch with him. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
So he's enjoying that. But that's something he does in his spare time. So that's, it's all good. So that's something he could, of course, develop onto. My younger son, I think he just generally is content at the moment, other than the fact that he wants to move out. Now, if they ever did say, look, I'm getting itchy feet, I need to do something different.
Right.
I'm more than happy to sort of sit down and talk to them about that, and about, look, here's the things, here's where I went wrong, and here's where I went right. The times I went wrong, if they were looking for a poster child for stupid, I could have been it. It's just don't do these things. But
Sure.
then again, had somebody told me that, would it have put me off doing it? Maybe not, because I think a lot of the time we have to make our own mistakes.
Right.
A lot of the time, I try and help people avoid mistakes, but a lot of the time, the big ones we have to make ourselves.
Right.
Because they're key points. They're key points in our life. I know. And sorry, I'm going off at another tangent, but I know. I mentioned earlier we came very close to losing everything, and when I first gave up corporate life, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who is a very successful entrepreneur, he sat with me over a coffee one day. He says, "Your trouble, Ozzy," he says, "you're not going to hit success yet." I said, "Why is that?" He says, "Because you're not desperate." He says, "You're not desperate enough. You're too comfortable." And he was absolutely right, because, as I say, I'd left with this buffer of, I knew I'd got about a year. I knew I'd got about a year in the bag before I needed to earn anything. And so there wasn't that impetus to say, go, make this work.
Right.
And so I know it did take that desperation for me to get into the video making. And when I got into the video making, what happened was people got in touch with me and said, "Hey, where did you get that video made?" And I said, "Well, I didn't. I did it myself." And it was, "Well, would you make me one?" And it was that sort of thing that it was that crisis that led to that opportunity.
Right.
And I know that's quite often an overused thing, isn't it? The crisis. But in my case, it happened to be so.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've gone off. Yeah. I think sleep deprivation probably.
No. So I mean, yeah, you've got to be excited, right? So you've got to be excited. You are, like I said, like we said in the beginning. You're working on your video product. It sounds like, do you have any like have your kids ever, now that they're older, they ever come back and say, "Man, you did this right. You did this great. Here are the things that I mean, I'm just out of curiosity. Did they ever come back and be like, if you hadn't have done this, I might have done that?
No, I think it's been more the other way around. Me going to them and saying,
"No appreciation for what we do, Oz."
Yeah, I think it'd be me telling them, "Look, you helped me out there."
That's funny. Well, hey, I mean, that's good too.
But no, I wasn't being totally facetious when I tell you they teach me stuff all the time. They really do, and they certainly dig me out of a lot of tech holes that I get into. But yeah. I'd have to come back to you on that, Brandon, and have a think about that one. Nothing springs to mind at the moment. That the mum all the time, yeah. I mean, they're very appreciative of what she did. But hey, look, for the majority of their childhood, she was the one that was around.
Right.
I was here, but I wasn't here. If you see what I mean, I was. I was out trying to earn a crust, but
I think to me too, that's one of the. It's difficult. I think as the father, we've got this perception of all that we need to do, otherwise the world's going to come crumbling down, and that's what we spend. I definitely found myself a lot of time, I've got to work harder at this. I've got to spend more time here and do more, better, good here, so that my family can have all these things. But then, you find that you're not even getting to spend that time with your family that you're trying to, do for.
Listen, I know that there were times, particularly in the early days in financial services, when I was still in the office, when it was the bath time for the kids, and the good that it was doing, me being in the office, I may as well have been at home with the kids at bath time, because I wasn't really getting anything done. It was the end of a long day. It was just, making a few calls that I didn't want to make. And because I didn't want to make them, I probably didn't come across very well. And therefore, the net result was, it was pointless. pointless.
Right.
But I felt because everybody else was in the office and working long hours, everybody else was in the office before, sort of 7:30 in the morning, didn't leave till 9, even later at night.
You've got this pressure.
You got to be there. You got to be there. If you, so. And so I knew, looking back, it was absolutely pointless me doing that, and I missed out on so much of value. And thankfully, Carol was here and more than made up for that. But I know that's stuff that I'll never get back, and that's why I started the When's My Time thing, because I didn't want anybody else. I wanted to do whatever I could to say to people, mums or dads, it doesn't have to be like that. I don't know what it is you specifically can do, but there is something that you can do. What
would you tell somebody? Like, would you say, for me, for example, what if I'm working 70 hours a week? Would you tell me, hey man, maybe cut it back down to 60, maybe cut it down to 50, because you're really not doing any good in those extra hours?
Yeah. I would say, right. Okay. Well look, why don't you start, I don't know, keep a journal and say, right, okay, today, what did I do? When did I do it? And what of that was effective? What of that actually was productive? What of that actually, if we're talking purely monetary, I sort of dismissed money earlier, but it's important. What of that moved me closer to earning the money that I need? Not necessarily the money I want, but the money I need to be able to spend time at home, and what of it was just window dressing? What of it was just, I don't know, kicking my heels, twiddling my thumbs, and try to narrow it down. Again, another overused thing is the Pareto principle, isn't it? The 80-20 rule, but it's true. And I know we can't, sort of narrow it down so we only do the 20% that does 80% of whatever. We that would be an idealized situation that never happened. But there's got to be times when you can say, well, actually, that, I was doing nothing there. I was literally doing nothing there. So if I took that chunk out of my day and moved that bit earlier and did that, that means I could, leave the office an hour and a half earlier or whatever, just by doing it more effectively. Now, that's not the same as saying that if there's part of the day where you're doing nothing productive, but it is restorative, if you need a break away from what you're doing so you can get your brain back into gear so that you're more effective for the next part of the day. I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying, get in at sort of 7 o'clock in the morning and work like crazy right through till 5 o'clock and without a break, and that, surely that way madness lies. But what I'm saying is that there has to be parts of the day that you can say, just ditch that. That. Let's stop doing that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. So words of two things actually. So let's do some words of parting wisdom, and then I think if I recall correctly, you had an offer you wanted to make to the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's do some parting words of wisdom. Something that maybe we didn't touch on that you would tell an expecting father, a current father, fathers that like yourself. That have them outside of the house. Some parting words of fatherly wisdom from across the pond.
Oh Lord, to an expectant father, seriously, people will tell them this all the time, but when that baby arrives, your life changes forever. Your life changes forever. And whatever change it is, even at times when it's tough, it will always be for the better. It will always be for the better. My life improved immeasurably. I won't go into the whole story, but our oldest son's birth was very difficult indeed, and I thought we'd lost him. It's on the podcast and it's elsewhere. You can read. I thought we'd lost him, and I was wheeled into a room in the early hours of the morning where Carol was wheeled into an operating theatre. And the reason I couldn't be there was because at that time of day there was nobody there that could look after me if I keeled over. That's the bottom line. So I was wheeled into a room, and for about an hour and a half I was in this room on my own, and all I'm thinking is save Carol, save Carol, save Carol. And then the nurse came and knocked on the door and said, Mr. Eyre, would you like to meet your son? And I thought of that. at that time I thought we'd lost the baby.
Hmm.
And those words I see as being the start of my fatherhood. I mean, I'm choking up now as I say it, but when she said, would you like to come and meet my son? You know, Mr. Eyre, would you like to come and meet your son? And I thought, geez, am I up to this?
To being a father.
This is it now. Am I up to this? And the answer is you are. The answer is you are. Nobody's going to give you a manual. Nobody's going to tell you how to do it. Or they will, but don't listen to them. You have to figure it out yourself. But you are up to it. You can do this.
Right.
Because we all can.
Right.
Because here's the thing. All the way back to the first amoeba, we could trace our way back. And every generation has managed it to get to this point here.
Right.
So if they could all do it,
right,
we can.
Right.
We can. Not easy, but we can do it. But sorry, I'm going off on one.
No, that's great. That's great.
And for fathers who are already fathers, just try and spend more time with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're spending time with the kids, be present.
Right.
Be present. Be with them. Don't be, as I was too often, in my own head, worrying about stuff that had happened during the day or worried about stuff that's going to happen tomorrow. Be with your kids.
How can I stop? How can I stop thinking about everything else?
It's easy to say, but it's so difficult to do. But start actually paying attention to the conversation, because kids, the conversations that you have with kids you think I go off at tangents. Boy, kids will take you down some delightful routes. I mean, they really will. And their use of language, and just focus on what, the color in their language is just wonderful. And if you can just allow yourself to just go on those trips of fantasy with them,
that's great.
I'd do that.
That's great.
I'm not sure how wise that all is, but
like you said, there is no manual, and so we spend a lot of time wondering whether or not we're doing it right, the best way, or I feel like we spend a lot of my personal sense is sometimes I feel like I'm doing great, and then I look back and I'm like, wait a second, I wasn't doing that great, right? So
you were doing it though.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what about like I said, children leaving the house, right? You got that's got to be, I think, almost the most difficult part of the whole thing.
Yeah,
like
it is.
I've sheltered them, I've taught them, I've done all these things throughout my entire life, and now I'm going to let them out into this world, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, when our younger son went to university and our older son was still at home, but he left home while our younger son was at university. And I looked at Carol and said, well, it's just us again now. And it hadn't been like that for 20 odd years. It was just the two of us. And in a sense, I won't lie, in a sense, it was quite nice. It was, just to do that. But boy, did I miss him. And for the first time, I understood, when I moved to London, I had an aunt and uncle who lived about 30 miles from London. And what happened was my dad and my mum drove me down to my aunt's. My mum stayed with my aunt, and then my dad drove me on to the place that I was going to stay in London. And I can remember sitting in the car and looking through the window at my mum sobbing, as I drove away. And it was the first time when the kids had gone, and we've got one back now, which I'm loving, but I know that's not for long. But I understood then for the first time what my mum was feeling,
right,
when she sort of waved me off with a sort of hanky clutch to her mouth and tears rolling down her straight cheeks. It's not easy, but I know you've sort of done your job. Right. You've sort of done your job if they're strong enough to go. That's what we're here for. I mean, earlier this year, I was fortunate enough to have robins nesting right outside. You're thinking, what's he talking about now? Tangents. But I was fortunate enough to, literally right outside my office window, I was fortunate enough to have robins nesting outside, and I was watching these robins, constantly, and the effort that they expend in bringing in worms and grubs and all that sort of stuff to feed these chicks, and they grew phenomenally quickly. You know, a couple of weeks, and they were ready to leave the nest, and all the effort that they put in, and they did their job. They got 5 chicks out of the nest. That was their job. It's all our job to prepare the next generation, and once we've done that, then we should, you know, wave them off happily, because it shows we didn't do too bad a job of it. I
love it. Great stuff, Oz. Great stuff. Well, Oz, again, I want to say thanks for taking the time. I know that I mean, we're past tea time. Thanks for spending tea time with me here.
It's my pleasure.
I want to go ahead. Let's talk about where can we go if we're looking for your upcoming.
I tell you what, I'm going to set up a special page, because what's going to happen at the time of recording. I don't know if I'm letting a secret go here. At the time of recording, this course hasn't been launched, but by the time you hear it, it probably has. Now, either way, we don't know, because it's a podcast. We don't know whether you're going to listen to this the day it's released, or a week later, or 2 months later, or 2 years later. So here's what happens during this product launch. I'm going to heavily discount it. Heavily discount the cost during the launch period. Probably to 10% or even less of the eventual cost. And there will be a page up that people can go during that launch period and pick this up. Now, because I don't know when you're going to listen to it, dear listener, that seems remarkably unfair if that period has gone. So what I'm going to do for listeners to Brandon's podcast, I'm going to put up a special page whereby you can go, and it doesn't matter when it is, if the course is still available, you will still be able to pick it up at the launch price. You will so I'm going to hold that. Now, where you're going to go, the page is not yet built yet, so I'm going to quickly decide. I'm going to put it on elitevideocreation.com. elitevideocreation.com, and I'll send Brandon a link to this, and he can probably put it in the show notes or something like that. elitevideocreation.com / and shall we say Fatherhood, so we know it's from
that's perfect. Yeah? There you go.
elitevideocreation.com / fatherhood, and you'll go there, and if the link is still there, you will be able to get the way after the general customers will be able to. You'll be able to get the course at the launch price, because I genuinely don't want cost to be a barrier to you getting that.
Awesome, Ozzy. Thanks for doing that for the listeners.
Pleasure.
Listeners, make sure you're reaching out to Ozzy, saying thanks. Ozzy, where can they find you online, social media?
You can find now. Here's where it gets complicated. My real name is Ivan, Ivan, Ivan Eyre. Although all my friends know me as Ozzy. So if you look online on Facebook for Ivan Eyre, but you can also get me via my podcast. You can go to whensmytime.com. That's the site for my podcast, and it's not it's when WHENS mytime.com, whensmytime.com. So there's an apostrophe in there somewhere. Or you can all look, if you want to talk to me directly. As I say to people in my podcast all the time, you can always email me at Ozzy, that's OZZY or OZZY as you may say, at whensmytime.com, and I can tell you all those emails come direct to me. I don't have an assistant. I have no filter system. And I will respond to those emails. So you can get me there. But you can find me on Facebook. You can find me at whensmytime.com. There's also a When's My Time Facebook page as well. So all the usual places, I'd say.
Wonderful, Oz. Thanks again for being on here with us today.
My absolute pleasure, Brandon.